new season of Alone in the Wilderness has kicked off with major rule changes, doubling the participants and prize money. 16 survival experts are split into 4 teams to compete in an open-ended survival challenge. The 4 teams will vie for resources, and the only ways out are firing a flare gun or being medically evacuated. The team that survives the longest will win a $1 million prize. This is the Alaskan wilderness. It's cold and wet here, with many brown bears roaming around. It's autumn now. In just a few weeks, it will turn into winter. The contestants arrived empty-handed, and the crew dropped supplies by helicopter. The contestants must head to the drop points to collect their supplies. The new rules and higher prize make this season even tougher. I guarantee this is the toughest and most exciting season of Alone in the Wilderness. The 16 contestants reached their drop points. The crew explained the exit rules and mentioned they could switch teams anytime. However, they can't survive solo. This rule is crucial. It means teammates can betray each other anytime. They grouped into teams of 4. Contestants could choose their teammates, often based on appearances when they didn't know each other well. Jordan was initially confused and got pulled into a team before understanding the rules. Eventually, Osei, Gil, Justin, and Rick formed one team. Dow, Joel, Jordan, and Paul formed another. Anda, Angie, Nick, and Luke formed a team. Brian, Corey, Javier, and Timothy formed the last team. After forming their teams, they began scouting for shelter spots. Each team was given a designated area to set up their shelters. They all received the same basic survival gear: an axe, a small knife, a tent, a tarp, a flashlight, a hunting bow with 8 arrows, a medical kit, a fire starter, and 2 cups. Safety gear included bear spray and a flare gun. The basic survival tools for 4 people were barely enough, significantly increasing the difficulty. Osei's team was still picking a campsite. The path was hard to navigate. Justin thought the area lacked resources, and with under an hour until sunset, they had to hurry to build a shelter. Gil saw a large open area when they arrived and decided to check it out. It's autumn in Alaska now, and the temperature drops very quickly at night. They need to build a shelter before it drops to freezing. This season, Alone in the Wilderness has switched from solo to team survival. They've cut down on equipment, but the prize money is now double. Everyone must do their best to contribute to the team if they hope to win. They carried the supplies. They searched the forest, but found it disappointing. The tall trees blocked much of the sunlight. Jill guessed it might rain tonight, and the mountains could leak water. Everyone was at a loss about the shelter. Those with plans kept proposing ideas, while those without just stared blankly, pretending to survey the surroundings for solutions. Anyway, they were all racking their brains over the shelter. Over at Brian's team, they were a group of 4 men. In theory, they should be the strongest team, and with hard work, food and drink wouldn't be an issue. They quickly picked a spot for the shelter. Brian, an outdoor stonemason, led the effort, handling shelter construction and wood gathering. In essence, Brian handled the heavy lifting. Javier decided to use 2 fallen trees as the shelter's framework. They placed branches on top as a framework. Under Javier's direction, they quickly built the shape of the shelter. Javier's leadership was far more effective than everyone talking at once. With his extensive outdoor experience, he felt very confident in this challenge. After arranging the shelter, he asked Corey to find some fatwood, but Corey didn't know what fatwood was. This surprised Javier, and his bluntness made Corey very embarrassed. Javier explained that fatwood is gathered branches from dead trees. This wood is tough and excellent for starting fires. A little fatwood goes a long way. After Javier told him, Corey went to find fire-starting materials. He was very obedient to Javier's instructions. While searching for materials, he saw a squirrel but unfortunately missed it. When Corey returned with the wood, he found the shelter already built. They worked quickly. Starting a fire before sunset would be ideal. Even though this group was all men, they were very efficient and proactive, giving them a strong chance of winning. Meanwhile, Ath's team, which included 2 women, was still debating how to build the shelter. In short, the team members kept chatting non-stop until their throats were dry. Justin wanted to explore the area, but Jill insisted on building a shelter. Meanwhile, they kept wasting time, repeatedly mentioning their dwindling hours. They just talked without acting. The team lacked leadership, and Rick was done wasting time. He decides to find a place to build a shelter on his own, not bothering to argue with Jill. Anyway, in this team, most members are quite headstrong. They wasted a lot of valuable time. Justin and Osei listened to Jill's suggestion. They set up a hillside shelter with limited resources, quickly assembling it to survive the night. But our shelter was almost flat on the ground. I stared at the bed frame, baffled by why they made the tent so low. Nika and Liu Yu are facing up to 15.24 millimeters of rain, so they must get ready for heavy downpours. Andy's team, being the farthest out, is currently the slowest in progress, but they quickly decided on a spot to set up their shelter. Once Nicole finalized the plan, they swiftly set up the tent. This type of roof tent is the simplest. They then used sticks to secure the base, which would channel rainwater to the ground. Angie believes that Nick's leadership simplifies things. Nick knows it will be very cold at night. He plans to build a stone fireplace to reflect heat and make it warmer at night by arranging stones into a reflective wall. The stone wall will focus the heat, but Angie admitted she doesn't know where to find the stones. Nick was stunned by Angie's lack of knowledge. After setting up the shelter, they began searching for fire-making materials. Angie thought Nick was somewhat chauvinistic but was glad she wasn't the only woman there. Anders, however, was straightforward and just followed orders. He simply follows orders and does what's necessary. He stayed back to chop wood while the others gathered resources. Meanwhile, Dawn's team. They were searching for a good shelter spot too. Their chosen location was perfect, flat and sunny. This group was made up of participants not chosen by the other 3 teams, essentially the leftovers. Jordan noticed an arrow and asked about its purpose. Paul told him that this arrow is for hunting small animals like squirrels, despite being the leftovers. Paul is a skilled hunter, Dawn a foraging chef, and Joel an engineer with great hands-on abilities. They quickly integrated into the team by leveraging their complementary strengths. Perhaps the most inconspicuous team is actually the strongest. They soon cooperated to build a shelter, not only securing it with paracord, but also used it to set hunting traps. With the shelter done, they focused on daily living. Paul took charge of daily tasks. All 4 teams have now built their shelters. Dawn's team and Andrew's team built sloped shelters on flat ground, while Osse's and Brian's teams used the natural terrain. With only 11 minutes until sunset, so everyone began working on making a fire. In the damp conditions, starting a fire is tough, but with many hands, even the toughest tasks become easier. Osse's team and Brian's team managed to start a fire, but the dampness put it out. Osse tried moss, and Brian's team used wood chips, but neither was dry enough to keep the fire going. Everything was wet and slippery, making it hard to find dry materials. Angie's team had the same problem. Neil used cotton from the first aid kit to start a fire with cotton balls. Their team was the first to successfully get a fire going. Why didn't the other teams think of that? Right now, they're the happiest, but how will 4 people fit in that tiny shelter? Overall, the first day went pretty smoothly, and Jordan's team also used some innovative techniques to successfully start a fire. Meanwhile, Brian's team sat in their shelter, looking defeated. After setting it up, they gave up. The temperature dropped to near 0 degrees. Plummeting fast, testing the shelter's insulation and the fire's warmth. Andrew was on fire watch when he heard strange noises, likely from a nearby black bear. Jordan's team couldn't sleep due to the cold and also heard footsteps approaching. There are many black bears in Alaska, and a nighttime bear attack would be extremely dangerous. Before, each person had their own sleeping bag, but now the show provided the gear. When winter hits, they definitely won't endure for long. It even began to drizzle at night, making it so cold their teeth chattered. The second day dawned. Last night, they barely slept. It was just too cold. They relied on their clothes for warmth, but even in such tough conditions, it didn't seem to affect them much. Once they get really hungry, they won't be smiling so much. Brian's butt cheeks. His butt cheeks felt like ice blocks, and he had to get up 3 times to pee. Angie couldn't sleep because of the uneven ground. Luke had a rough night too. Jordan's team huddled around the fire, fully realizing how challenging it is here. Angie's team kept their fire going all night. They made a water collector but only got a mouthful. Today, they're set on finding fresh water. Tasks were assigned early, with Nick handling the hunting. Luke is tasked with shelter improvements, and Angie, who loves fishing, complements the team well. This lifted Anders' spirits. Their main focus today is finding water. They found a stream here. However, a river upstream might contaminate the water. Ander ignored this and drank a cup straight away. Even though the water is flowing, it could still be contaminated. They chose to boil it before drinking. Justin's team, after just one night, is already considering moving. The uneven ground made it very uncomfortable to sleep. They decided to walk along the coast to find a better spot with water. Right now, they're back to square one, lagging behind other teams. Yesterday, they followed Jill's advice and picked this awful spot. Rick has lost trust in her. Now, he wants to take charge. Now everyone blames Jill. Jill feels very wronged. She's a girl, so no matter what she does wrong, it's not her fault. If there's any fault, it's their inability to adapt. After packing up, they began to leave. As they walked out, They noticed smoke from the other side, indicating their rivals had lit a fire. This realization deepened their discouragement. Ose has lost faith in his team and wants to be the first to leave if things go wrong. The area is overrun with water plants. Rig, who just said he would lead the team, is struggling to walk. Leading everyone is even harder. They saw a small waterfall on the way. It's a clean water source. They decided to camp nearby, but it's also very damp here. And the spot they found isn't flat either. Ose, Jill, and Justin are discussing how to build the shelter. Rig vanished, and Jill believes he likes solitude. He's a returning contestant from the wilderness survival show, so he prefers solitude. But since all the contestants are returnees, and the show has its requirements, they have to follow them. Meanwhile, Brian's team takes their time setting up camp, focusing on food first. Brian and Corey are busy picking blueberries. Javier and Timothy are exploring the beach, looking for shellfish or crabs. After the tide goes out, there's a lot of seaweed here, but Corey only wants meat. There are many small pools here, possibly due to stranding, and there are many remnants. Corey isn't sure if they're edible. Javier says an expert tried them once, and now the grass on his grave is taller than me. He also said eating this would make your mouth numb and there's a 50% chance of dying. I was speechless. Isn't this almost like poison? These foreigners are so picky. If it were Chinese people here, they could eat 2 tons of rocks. Javier says as long as they aren't starving, they won't eat this stuff. But Timothy wants to pick it up and eat it right away. Javier is shocked by Timothy's lack of experience. How can someone be so inexperienced? And talking to these guys, I'm surprised at their lack of experience. Anyway, Javier obviously looks down on Timothy. They continue along the tide line, but honestly, they seem clueless about foraging. Timothy mentions they haven't found any food yet, and even if they did, they can't cook it without a camp. Jordan's team is the most comfortable now. Since no one wanted to join them, they made their own team. Now they have fire, water, and shelter. They continue to improve their shelter. Jordan takes on the hunting task. He aims to find a deer, having successfully hunted one in the last survival show. Jordan could be the first in the show's history to bag such a big animal. That deer made his life feel like a vacation. He ate roasted meat every day and won the championship. So, can he hunt another deer this time? He found some hoof prints on the ground. Paul also checks the traps he set yesterday. The traps were pulled aside. He has to reset them. There are animals here, so hopefully they can catch something to eat. He saw some droppings nearby, very smelly and appetizing. He guesses it's bear droppings. Joel and Dawn are exploring the coast. Joel has been fishing since he was a kid. While Dawn was a chef, he knew what was edible and what wasn't, so they searched everywhere. Dawn found some shellfish, and they planned to collect them to eat. If Javier from the neighboring team finds out, he'll surely mock their inexperience. Meanwhile, Jordan's team is already eating with food, water, and fire. You could say they're doing well for survival. The newbies are already eating, while the pros might still be hungry. Dawn seems to be having a great time in her team. Everyone is talented and pleasant to talk to. The sky is starting to cloud over. In Alaska's rainy season, a single rain can last up to a week, which will increase their challenge. Over at Anders' team, Ander is vomiting. He drank untreated water, and it's hitting him hard. Solo heroics have their cost. You've done enough showing off, haven't you? Only you feel the pain now. You looked so cool drinking it. It's pretty embarrassing to be throwing up with everyone watching. You can just imagine how weak the team's unity is. Seeing him vomit continuously, his teammates are now hesitant to drink the water. Over at Brian's team, they're still busy trying to start a fire. Right now, only Brian's and Justin's teams are without fire. Without it, they're unmotivated to work since fire is essential for their survival here. These guys can't even figure out that medical cotton could help start a fire. They all have beards. In a pinch, they could use some beard hair to get a fire going. Javier keeps calling them hey, which Corey really hates, so the others just ignore him. Brian is also annoyed by Javier's arrogance, but at least he managed to get a fire going in the end. Without fire, they barely make it 2 days. Even with fire, they could quit anytime. Ander vomited for hours after that. He chose to leave after drinking untreated water, which is really scary. Now, their group is down to 3 members. Ander pulled out the signal flare, marking the first exit. His leaving further weakened their team. Nick can't stand quitters like Ander. Now that he's gone, Angie is the only woman left on their team. She's terrified of being shunned by the guys on her team. The other teams are excited to see someone drop out. Seeing another team weaken is a good thing. Everyone starts to feel surprised, wondering what's going on. What makes competitors quit the next day? The biggest challenge here isn't Alaska's harsh environment. It's the later stage team battles. With no rules, the toughest and scariest part is the conflicts between people. They will fight for resources and even destroy shelters. What surprises will they bring us? Stay tuned for the next episode. The new season of Alone in the Wilderness is here, bringing the hardest challenges so far. Contestants are building rafts to win crab traps. Jordan, a standout, even does push-ups on his raft to show off his confidence. By the third day, constant rain and freezing weather have weakened all contestants. Javier's team is barely getting by on seaweed, while Brian is starting to worry about food shortages. Justin's team is also collecting seaweed and small shellfish, but the lack of protein and vitamins is taking a toll. Jill is out of breath just walking, and Ace found a worm and fed it directly to Rick. Chicken heads and feet. He won't eat worms raw. Are these foreigners just being stubborn or what? Nicole's team is planning a big squirrel hunt. Andy had to quit after drinking untreated water and vomiting non-stop, leaving them with only 3 members. One less mouth to feed isn't a problem, but having one less person to work is a big issue. Meanwhile, Jordan's team is using discarded soda can tabs to make fishing hooks. Jordan aims to be the first to catch a fish from the Nika River. I have great faith in his skills because he was the first contestant to hunt a 300-pound deer. Their team is managing well with water and fire. They have a shelter, but not enough food. Even though their team is made up of rejected contestants, they're currently the most comfortable. Jordan has taken on the fishing task, while Justin's team is out there foraging for grass, practically eating everything by the riverbank. On their way back, they saw a black bear crossing the river, and everyone was amazed. If they could hunt that bear, this season is a guaranteed win. They could eat barbecue every day without a problem. The bear was less than 100 meters away. Just looking won't help. They should have picked up a rock and thrown it. If Jordan were there, the bear would have to toast him before leaving. They stared each other down, neither backing off. Come on, get your bows and hunt. I was so anxious, I almost peed myself. In past seasons, the wilderness experts would chase the bear with rocks. But look at you guys. As they got closer to observe the bear, suddenly a flare gun went off ahead. Everyone noticed the gunshot next time, which meant another contestant was quitting. 2 people dropped out at once, making the remaining teams very happy because they were now closer to the championship. The 2 flares ignited everyone's spirits. Each flare was like a fireworks celebration for the competing teams. Nick's team felt a renewed hope of winning when they saw 2 more people quit. It turned out to be Javier's team members, Corey and Timothy, who chose to leave because the nights were too cold and damp, and they didn't like being led by Javier. Leading in the wilderness is usually about individual survival, but following someone else's instructions caused a too many cooks spoil the broth scenario. They weren't weak, they were just too independent to work as a team. Brian wasn't too upset about losing Corey and Timothy, seeing them as complainers and rookies. If they didn't like Javier's leadership, why not join another team? Instead, they chose to quit directly. Javier is now very worried. If Brian also decides to leave, he will have to find another team to join. If no one wants him, he will be forced to quit the competition as well. Out of the 4 teams, 2 have already lost members. Jordan is fishing by the river. If he catches something, his team will be one step closer to victory. The river is very turbulent, and the weather is not only cold, but also drizzling. Jordan keeps trying to fish here, but maybe this spot isn't right for him. He decides to explore the area, hoping to find some food. Jordan is determined to find food. He won't give up easily. He heads upstream and spots Nick's team. Jordan wants to assess the competition, believing that knowing his rival's status will boost his chances. He quietly approaches Nick's team.
I just noticed smoke was coming up.
We need to look at the bigger picture. We caught a bird today and had a confrontation. We've had enough food to keep us going. I know they're out there. I call out to them. I see you guys. I lost a player, but it's gonna turn around. Jordan claimed his team was eating well, but Nick saw through it and said he caught a big fish. They're both playing mind games to shake each other's confidence. If it works, it could really hurt morale. Nick doesn't like Jordan's psychological tactics. He just doesn't agree with his approach. Actually, this season's rules of Alone in the Wilderness have changed. Contestants must not only survive nature but also, when only 2 teams remain, embark on a no-time limit survival trek until one team outlasts the other. Jordan believes his team will buy into his claims and possibly defect. His strategy is smart. First, break up the opposing team, then eliminate teammates and wear down the competition during the trek, aiming to win the $1 million prize with fewer people. Jordan just left. Nick quickly dismissed Jordan's claim, saying he could tell from Jordan's body language and eyes that he was lying. Angie agreed, calling Jordan a liar. They all insist they don't believe him, but their true thoughts remain hidden. Meanwhile, Justin's team gathered seaweed and limpets this morning, making 2 cups of limpet soup. These limpets, though small, provide a rare protein source. If they collect enough, they can enjoy a tasty seafood soup. For now, Justin's team is content, having something to eat. It's almost like a holiday, but Lee is coughing non-stop, probably because he ate raw worms while foraging this morning. By evening, Lee's condition hadn't improved. The temperature dropped below freezing, and around 3 a.m., he was standing outside the shelter, unable to sleep. Maybe lying on the cold ground triggered his asthma. By the 5th morning, with temperatures at -1 degree, Lee started crying. Even Justin, a tough guy, was moved to tears. They were very distressed by Lee's condition. Lee decided to quit the competition. He hadn't slept all night and made the decision to leave at dawn. The relentless rain and cold were too much for Lee. He signaled the crew to take him home. With Lee gone, Justin's team was down to 3, adding pressure on Jill. In just 5 days, the contestants had quit, leaving Jordan's team as the only one fully intact. The 3 remaining members hugged and prepared for the challenges ahead. Other teams saw the signal flare too, but they were happy about it because Jordan's team was still fully intact, giving them a lot of confidence for the upcoming competition. Fewer members in other teams meant reduced competitiveness, which was an advantage for teams with more people. Angie was fishing by the river, but the weather was getting worse. By the 6th day, it had been raining continuously, and all contestants were working in the rain, collecting wood, which was a daily necessity regardless of the weather. Jordan kept trying to fish as the 7th day arrived, and the weather finally improved. After several days of rain, the sun finally came out, lifting everyone's spirits. Some were enjoying the scenery, while others took advantage of the good weather to fish. Javier and Brian heard a noise in their shelter. It was the signal for a helicopter dropping supplies. The show would deliver resources to each team without prior notice, providing new tools, map information, and new competition rules. They received some tools to make rafts. About 1,200 meters east of the river, there was an island with the best fishing spots where they could. You can catch treasures here. The Crab Island has 5 crab traps hidden, but on another island, they won't need rafts, they just need to time the tides right. The show clearly wants them to start competing for food. Brian's team realizes they need to compete not just for resources, but also for food. Nick's team has already started making a raft. Luke, an engineer, has the most experience in raft building. Time is tight today, so the faster, the better. Having more people is a big advantage in this round. Nick's team is basically just Luke building the raft alone. This, of course, slows things down a lot. Just chopping wood takes a lot of time. Luke is constantly planning how to build the raft. Meanwhile, Brian suggested to Javier that they start building their raft near the deserted island. With only 2 people, carrying the raft isn't the smartest choice. Javier agreed, and they decided to head to the deserted island to build the raft. Brian realized teamwork is essential for success. Brian decided to follow Javier's lead, and together they carried tires to the deserted island. Meanwhile, Jordan's team had already built a large raft. As they say, many hands make light work. Despite being made up of rejected contestants, they were excelling. Jordan's hands-on skills were impressive, and he was very proactive. He quickly built the raft's framework, and all that was left was to secure the wood. By adding tires, they increased buoyancy and stability. They had thought of everything while building the raft. For long-term use, the raft needed to hold crab traps, so it was best not to make it a one-time use. Jordan hoped this raft would bring them more fish and crabs. It's good to think ahead, but don't take too long, because Javier and Brian were already on their way to the island. They had been walking for several hours when they saw Justin building a raft by himself. Both of their teams were short-handed. Justin suggested that whoever got there first would share the crab traps. If Justin got there first, he would share with them, and if they got there first, they would share with him. Justin's proposal was accepted by Javier's team. Both teams reached an agreement because Javier needs to strengthen his team through cooperation to defeat the others. Brian and Javier started building a simple raft to get the supplies as quickly as possible. Why go through all the trouble when you could just swim over with a tire? Meanwhile, Justin is building a raft alone, which looks quite messy, just wooden tires tied together. As long as it can hold one person, it's fine. Us and Jill are watching from the side, with Jill thinking the raft is a waste of time. So why don't these two girls help out? Are they afraid of getting caught by the police for working? Justin is busy while Nick's team has already built their raft and is ready to move it near the island. Jordan's team is making final adjustments, and Brian's raft is almost done and they're nearby. Jordan's team is ready to set off. Their raft seems to be the best. The real test is whether it can float. Jordan's team is ready to head to the island, and Nick's team is testing their raft in the water. Unfortunately, even Angie couldn't make it float. Clearly, their raft design failed, for tires can't support a person. Luke decides to modify the raft quickly, or else the crabs will end up in someone else's pot. Nick can't even bear to watch. Building a raft is indeed time-consuming, and Nick isn't very confident in Angie's abilities. To save time, they decide to take a risk. Luke plans to let Angie use the raft to gather supplies. Despite Angie's assurance, Nick remains doubtful. Angie is the lightest, and no one else can make the raft float. But Nick's distrust frustrates Angie, leading to an argument, which is foolish at this critical moment. It's not about their abilities, it's the classic too many cooks spoil the broth situation. So I wasn't confident in Angel's ability. If I can't do something, I doubt Angel can either. She may not have the physical strength. Why do you think that?
I don't think that Angie can make this. May not have the physical strength.
Why do you think that?
You really have a spark, but never point fingers at me. You keep cutting me off, and I snap back. The tires are tiny, and I weigh less than you guys. Maybe I'm wrong. This is a little Scope Pro to be hands-on. Facing the argument, Luke is speechless. How can they argue at such a crucial time? Meanwhile, Jordan's team has already set sail, and their raft is performing well. Booker and Angie decide to put the raft back in the water. On Justin's side, the two girls are still watching and criticizing Justin for being inefficient. I'm speechless. Does Justin plan to eat all the crabs himself? These girls are definitely the hidden bug of the season. Javier and Brian have also finished their raft and put it in the water. Jordan is already halfway to the island, leading the race. Angie also starts paddling. Jordan is confident about this mission and aims to secure the crab traps for his team. Brian also starts paddling, and all teams are now competing. The first team to get the crab traps can take them all and defeat the others. Nick and Luke start mocking Jordan, asking where his teammates are. Seeing Angie behind, Jordan drops down and does a set of push-ups, mocking their slowness, which surprises Jill. Angie considers herself a skilled fisherman, always observing the water flow. But what's the use? Besides watching, she's just getting instructions from teammates on the shore. The raft is so poorly made that she starts losing confidence and considers giving up. However, Justin's team is still watching from the shore. Angie unexpectedly reaches the middle of the river, where the current is strong, and quickly catches up to Jordan, who is swimming leisurely. Seeing Angie beside him, Jordan starts to panic. Using the advantage of the river's current, Angie reaches the island first. It's a tortoise and hare race, with the tortoise winning. Angie starts collecting crab traps, grabbing 3, while Jordan gives up on Brian's raft. Their team eventually quits the competition. Justin's team, with the two girls watching, never finished their raft. The alliance between Justin and Brian's teams fell apart. The strongest team didn't win, nor did the weakest. Instead, a middle-strength team won. The show's drama is at its peak. Jordan returns to the shelter disappointed, while Angie celebrates her victory. Now that they know the fishing spot, how will they start gathering food? Let's look forward to the next episode. This crab trap could be worth $1 million. After 10 days of starvation, hope finally appeared. They roasted the crabs directly on the fire. The survival experts in the wilderness enjoyed a seafood feast. In the toughest season of Alone in history, the experts are surviving as if they are on vacation. And catch the previous episode. In a classic tortoise and hare scenario, Jordan's overconfidence cost him the first landing, letting Angie snag the crab trap. With only 3 traps on the island, Angie took all of them to weaken the competition, even though one would have sufficed for his team. Jordan missed the perfect timing, getting swept away by the river. Meanwhile, Justin's team couldn't finish their raft, and Jill, along with another teammate, blamed him for their delay. The timing of the tide was critical, and Javier's team's raft failed, leaving Brian unable to navigate and missing the competition. Angie, without a doubt, secured all the crab traps, proving his worth and earning Nick's respect. They now just need to wait for the tide to place the traps in the river. Angie became the hero of his team, and their shelter was already in great condition when they returned. The teammates quickly started a fire to warm him up. Despite securing the crab traps, the tension between Angie and Nick remained. Nick reflected on his initial distrust of Angie and felt guilty, eventually apologizing to her. Angie accepted the apology, hoping such issues wouldn't arise again. Currently, their team seemed to be the best, with enough crab traps to potentially secure a lot of food. Whenever he had time, Nick would reinforce and improve the shelter. Meanwhile, Javier's team returned to shore, realizing today's efforts were in vain. The worst off was Brian. Brian also got his clothes wet, and when they returned, they explained the failure to Justin. Because they were too close to the island, the current was very strong. Brian mentioned that he initially wanted to start from the camp, but he had said to build the raft near the island. Now, he was the first to shift the blame again. They attributed the failure to the strong current without acknowledging that their raft wasn't well made. They were now in a hurry to dry their clothes. Brian blamed the failure on Javier because he let Javier make the final decision, and naturally, he took the fall for it. Justin struggled to finish the raft because the two girls on his team were just watching and not helping. They kept blaming him for being slow. Their attitude made me want to take off my belt and whip them, even if I had to shout until my throat was sore. With these two women, I doubt Justin's team has much chance of winning. While studying the map, Jill found there was more than one way to the island, and it was possible to walk there during low tide. Jordan finally made it back to shore, but he gained nothing from the competition and wasted at least 1,000 calories. The energy from the calories was now gone, and he felt exhausted, cold, wet, and hungry, desperately needing a crab trap to replenish his energy. He felt the weight of failure. When he returned to the shelter, his teammates asked about the situation, but he couldn't speak and just shook his head to shake off the frustration. Despite Jordan's failure, his teammates didn't blame him, unlike the other three teams. All the other teams were short-handed, but Jordan's team had always been at full strength. His teammates encouraged him, saying they still had plenty of mussels for dinner. Meanwhile, Javier and Brian were also relying on mussels, their only protein source. Javier was angry with Brian, but couldn't afford to lose another teammate. If Brian quit, Javier would have to join another team or leave the competition. For Javier, having teammates was crucial to staying in the competition, so he began to reconcile with Brian. By the 8th day, frost appeared overnight. Angie had already taken 3 crab traps, but 2 remained hidden. Angie and Ace planned to search for them, but Justin's raft wasn't ready. Ace and Jill decided to walk to the traps during low tide. Despite the danger, the tides in Big Neck Bay peaked and hit their lowest points every 6 hours, with the highest at 6:20 a.m. At 20 minutes past, the tide is at its lowest, and by 12:48 p.m., it peaks, with a 4.8-meter difference. They can walk to the crab traps now, but why don't the other teams know this? It takes just 20 minutes to reach the island, but they don't have much time to search. Let's see if they get lucky. Jill scours the shore for traps, while Ace monitors the tide. The water is rising, but they still haven't found the traps. Time is running out, and they vent about the hopelessness of the situation. Meanwhile, Jordan's team. Over here, Dawn woke up early and found huge footprints nearby, bigger than a head. Suddenly, Nick's team arrived, and Jordan's team decided to talk to them. Nick's team got 3 crab traps yesterday. Are they trying to form an alliance with Jordan's team? But it's not an alliance, only a fool would do that because, in the end, only one team. The winning team gets $1 million prize, making alliances pointless. Nick's team aimed to use their crab traps to lure members from Jordan's group. Luke said they had enough traps to live comfortably. If anyone wants to join them, they can. Jordan's group is currently the largest and most competitive team. Luke's goal in poaching members is to weaken a strong team, giving them an edge in the later stages of the competition. But everyone is smart enough to see through Nick's intentions. Paul states that Nick's team is approaching them the wrong way. Nick's group hasn't specified who they want, but Paul makes it clear that their team is very united and won't split up. With Paul's firm stance, Nick's team can't continue the conversation and has to leave as the tide rises quickly. Asa and Jill were still searching for crab traps when they realized the tide had risen over the land they crossed earlier. Just as they were about to head back, Jill unexpectedly found a crab trap. What luck! Their team is allied with Javier's team, so this means Javier's team will also get a crab trap. They rushed back to the shore, but the rising tide had already cut off their path. They had to either wait for the next low tide or risk crossing the river. They chose to cross while the water was still shallow, but their clothes got completely soaked. With the temperature at only 4 degrees, getting wet in such cold conditions is extremely dangerous and could lead to hypothermia, which is life-threatening. They needed to get back to the shelter immediately to dry off, or their heart rates could drop dangerously low, leading to shock. Once back, they took off their wet clothes. They needed to start a fire immediately to warm up. Jill kept calling for Justin to help, but he pretended not to hear her. She thought it was because of their argument with Ace about Tal the day before. Eventually, Justin came back and asked what was happening, claiming he hadn't heard her. Jill shouted at him, blaming him for not helping with the fire. Ace stayed silent, hiding in the shelter. Justin was annoyed by Jill's tone, and they argued fiercely. Jill felt she deserved special treatment for finding the scorpion trap and was frustrated that Justin didn't get it. Jill already looked down on Justin, who had been struggling with the raft for 2 days without finishing it. Now that she had the crab trap, she felt superior to him. Despite their heated argument, where they cursed each other's ancestors, Justin still chopped wood and started the fire, proving his worth. On the 9th day, early in the morning, Angie set out to catch crabs. As the lightest member of Nick's team and the only girl, she took on the crabbing task with confidence. Angie had to paddle the raft out and submerge the crab trap for a few hours. After baiting the trap, she set off. Nick trusted Angie completely for this crabbing mission. He no longer doubted her. Instead, he was confident in Angie's abilities. Angie loaded the crab traps onto the raft. She was truly capable. The trap's design was simple: bait in the middle, openings around the sides to guide the crabs in, making it hard for them to escape. Angie paddled to the middle of the river, risking getting wet and cold. Meanwhile, Justin's team also aimed to catch crabs. They launched their raft, and once it was stable, Justin took the traps and headed to the crabbing area alone. In his team, he always ended up doing the tough and tiring tasks. Justin had been doing all the work until today when he used the raft for crabbing, finally earning Jill and the others recognition of its value. Meanwhile, Jordan's team was the only one without crab traps, so Paul started hunting alone to bring back some protein. He found tracks, likely from deer, and guessed that this tree was a frequent spot for them. As the most experienced hunter, Paul felt immense pressure to succeed. With limited resources, he had to rely on continuous hunting. He even found animal bones, likely left by a bear, indicating fierce competition and a dangerous environment. Paul guessed that a bear had gnawed on the bones, indicating fierce hunting competition. The bones' proximity to their shelter suggested a dangerous environment. Despite daily hunting, Paul's efforts were fruitless, eroding his confidence. The failures weighed heavily on him, and his daughter's photo only deepened his despair, a common vulnerability for survival contestants. After another unsuccessful hunt, he returned empty-handed. Meanwhile, Justin ventured out with Xie Long, but the weather was quite harsh, with sudden fog and light rain. Justin's patience was wearing thin, but at the moment of collecting the traps, he was thrilled by a big haul. This time, Justin caught 12 crabs and brought them back to the shelter. Ace was ecstatic upon seeing the crabs. These large Dungeness crabs were so big that one could fill a person up. Justin's team was the first to get crabs, and today was destined to be a feast day for them, with each crab weighing several pounds. With the crabs, Jill felt their team was the strongest. These crabs indeed turned the tide for their team. Perhaps the moment they got the crab traps, the wheels of their fate began to turn. When they caught the big crabs, those wheels must have been spinning even faster, or maybe they had already started smoking. However, Nick's team also had a big catch. Angie started calling out to her teammates from afar. Luke and Nick came out to help upon hearing her. Today, they caught 6 crabs, each a large Dungeness crab. It took only 3 hours to catch so many crabs, indicating the high density of crabs here. Each crab weighed over 2 pounds, enough to feed them for 5 days. After bringing the crabs back to the shelter, they started preparing dinner. Angie threw the crabs directly into the fire to roast. Crabs have little meat, and roasting is not the best way to cook them. Boiling would yield more meat, but they had plenty of crabs, so they ate them all in one meal. Thanks to Angie's efforts, he felt moved by his own success. Originally the weakest team, they had now turned the tables to become one of the strongest. But they weren't the only ones enjoying a crab feast tonight. Justin's team was also feasting, having caught even more crabs. Javier, allied with Justin's team, also got some crabs, but this was a foolish move. Justin's team was nurturing a competitor, and it was only a matter of time before they played out the farmer and the snake story. Jordan's team, once the best, had now become the worst. The show's producers clearly knew how to create drama. Jordan felt his team's morale dropping. With no success in fishing or hunting, they began discussing how to get protein from other teams. Paul suggested bartering or directly trading for crabs. Dawn didn't want to get involved with Nick's team, leading to internal disagreements. Paul felt that if they didn't get food soon, their team might be the first to be eliminated. Paul's suggestions were always rejected by Dawn. Dawn proposed stealing a crab trap, but that would lead to a new series of competitive issues. Paul began to lose faith in his team and considered switching teams. If Paul really considered switching teams, it would contradict his earlier statement about their unity. On the 10th day, Jordan was chopping wood and fell asleep while doing so. He felt extremely hungry and exhausted, even feeling dizzy while sitting. This was a sign of physical exhaustion. After winning the championship in Season 8, Jordan didn't gain weight at home. His love for exercise kept his body fat low, making it hard for him to endure this time. If he didn't get food soon, he wouldn't last much longer. The weather in Alaska was getting colder, and by the 13th day, it was fully winter. Jordan's team was nearly depleted, and Joel felt his body was failing. As time passed, they were starving. Jordan was so hungry he couldn't think clearly. In a survival challenge with no rules, why didn't he listen to Dawn's suggestion to steal a trap? Jordan was responsible for chopping wood every day, and despite his teammates urging him to rest, he didn't listen. Paul was very worried about his condition. I really admired Jordan. He was always the most proactive in the team, building shelters, fishing, and gathering firewood. He would rather die than take it easy. Paul felt he wouldn't last long at this rate, and indeed, Jordan collapsed while chopping wood. The production team appeared instantly. Here, the legendary deer hunter Jordan was carried away, still unconscious when the medics arrived. What new challenges will they face next? Stay tuned for the next episode. This is probably the most competitive episode in the history of Alone. Sabotaging rafts is just the beginning. Sneaking into the opponent's shelter to steal sleeping bags takes it to another level. These contestants are really pushing the limits of sabotage. In the last episode, Jordan collapsed while chopping wood and was carried away by his teammates. Since he didn't use his signal flare, the show allowed him to continue, proving that this challenge has no strict rules. Dawn is also curious whether Jordan will return. Seeing their teammates starving, they are now focusing on getting enough protein. The other three teams are living it up, while Jordan's team is having the toughest time. Paul wants to negotiate with Nick's team for a crab trap, even offering to chop wood for them every day. Paul is desperate for Jordan to stay, so he decides to sacrifice himself to get a crab trap from Nick's team. Jordan's condition has changed his strategy. Paul visits Nick's shelter, initially just looking around. Nick's team probably thinks Paul wants to join them. After the tour, Paul reveals his intentions, and Angie responds. A crab trap would be enough for them to live comfortably, but their method isn't great. Angie suggests that if Paul uses their method to catch crabs, they should share a third of the crabs with Paul's team, which is a fantastic deal. Paul agrees immediately. To ease Paul's food problem, Nick's team allows them to take a crab trap right away, which is a huge favor. Perhaps seeing their kindness, Paul reciprocates by bringing up Nick's team's request for members from the other day. Paul expresses his admiration for their team. Oh my, Paul is starting to betray his original team. He had always claimed he wouldn't abandon his team, but now he's thinking about joining Nick's team. However, Nick's team didn't accept him immediately. If it were me, I wouldn't take him either. His proposal showed his dissatisfaction with his own team. Keeping him in Jordan's team might weaken them. Nick's team isn't foolish. They need more people but prefer to weaken a rival team rather than gain one more member. After Paul left, they discussed him.
I'm on the strongest team.
He's so stubborn. He can do everything. We're splitting up. A
strong team, but without their main food source, they would crumble. Nick's team knows Paul's team lost their best hunter, so they're not in a hurry. On the 14th day, a helicopter arrived over Paul's shelter and dropped a package just for them. Is this special treatment? They approached and found a black box with a letter from Jordan inside. Jordan, for the sake of fairness, decided not to return to the competition. Together has come to an end. I will not be returning.
Together has come to an end. I will not be returning.
Yeah.
Realizing that a huge part of our team was a powerhouse. Keep fighting.
Realizing that a huge part
Not
of our
only
team
did
was
we
called
find your
Keep
strength
Fighting.
inspiring,
Not only did
but
we
your
found
spirit will
the
continue
truth
to
of your
motivate us forever.
Bible, draw inspiration from you forever. Your
Your effort to keep us supplied has been invaluable. Farewell, Jordan. From this point on, we have to win this for Jordan. His departure has left us heartbroken because we know how crucial he was. Fans who watched the first 2 episodes know that Jordan took on too much responsibility. He fished for us in the worst weather and collected wood even when he was starving. Jordan is the kind of player who'd rather lose than take an easy win. Knowing his character, it's clear why he wouldn't return, as it might seem like special treatment. In his letter, Jordan urged Paul to lead the team to victory, perhaps recognizing Paul as the best choice for Nick's group. Overcome with guilt, Paul fell to his knees. I've never seen a contestant's exit cause such a strong emotional reaction from teammates. It's no wonder they supported Jordan after he lost the crab trap competition. They never spoke ill of him.
I'm so sorry, guys. I really thought.
No, that's all right. Will Jordan's departure change Paul's heart? Let's keep watching. The teammates fired a signal flare for Jordan, marking his official exit from the competition. Now, although the teams are incomplete, Javier's group, seeing the signal flare, felt a boost in confidence. They have crabs to eat and naturally hope to see others drop out. The signal flares from other teams are like fireworks to the competitors. Justin's team celebrated right away. While back at Paul's camp, Joel returned to the shelter, and Dawn asked if he had seen the crab trap, but Joel said he hadn't. They discovered Paul's sleeping bag was missing, and Dawn was so shocked she almost had a meltdown. Joel guessed that Paul had defected, and his sudden departure without a word made them furious, especially since he took the crab trap with him, leaving no consideration for his teammates. Joel thought Paul was a coward. You can choose another team, but at least inform your teammates. Sneaking away like that is outright betrayal. Dawn guessed he went to Nick's team. I knew Paul would defect, but I didn't expect it to be this quick. Was he just acting when he cried so hard earlier? This show is so dramatic, it would blow the minds of not just the wilderness survival community, but the entire universe. Paul took his stuff to Nick's team and told them about Jordan. Nick's team was very eager to have him join, making them the strongest team now. Dawn's team is furious and heads over to confront Paul, cursing him loudly enough for Justin's team to hear. They never expected to witness such a heated argument in a wilderness survival competition. Dawn is extremely angry at Paul's betrayal, feeling like he wants to strangle him. To him, Paul's disloyalty feels as painful as being cheated on by a spouse. Nick's team tells Paul not to stress too much. He's here to win the competition, not to starve. Paul is also quite smart, always talking about changing strategies. It turns out his strategy was to make the best move.
He lied to me.
F***ing traitor. Him, he's all like, oh, we're all about playing a clean game.
Gameplay. Let's go.
Hard not to put both my hands around his neck.
Paul's actions weren't entirely wrong. He just moved a bit too quickly. Joel and Dawn confronted Paul, accusing him of taking their stuff. Paul realized that Jordan's exit caused their team to fall apart and admitted he was here for his family, not the team. Nick also considered that without food, he and Paul would be in a tough spot. He thought about giving Joel and Dawn a crab trap out of pity, but never did. Eventually, Dawn and Joel openly said they needed to adjust their strategy, hinting they might resort to stealing. Before, Dawn's idea was to steal their crab trap. Joel's team was down to just 2 people, and to keep surviving, they had to come up with some plans. On day 15, Justin's team was cooking breakfast, having gathered a lot of mussels to boil, which was their staple food. They didn't know what had happened to Jordan's group, but guessed that someone quitting on day 14 wasn't a coincidence. Justin thought that the departure was likely due to various reasons. Originally, their team was the worst off, but now that they had found a crab trap, they had no worries about food. While eating and drinking, Jill guesses that Nick's and Joel's team still have 3 members each, but their morale might be low. Ace thinks it's normal for people to quit early, and later, teams rely on core members to endure. Anyway, they're well fed and rested now. It seems like everyone believes they're really strong and united, but that's only because they haven't faced personal conflicts yet. If I hadn't seen Paul's actions, I might have bought their act. The new rule this season is clever, keeping contestants focused on eliminating each other to avoid boredom. Jill insists that if anyone from the other teams wants to join them, they'll be completely rejected, and they plan to get Javier's team to agree to this too. Their aim is obvious. They don't want to share the prize money too much later. They're doing fine now and don't need another mouth to feed. I've always disliked these two girls' attitudes. They think they're so powerful that they don't even respect me, the survival show commentator. Remember, with just a flick of my finger, I can ruin you in the script. They're planning to join Javier's team, and right now, Javier and Brian are picking up double portions. Javier once arrogantly told Corey that eating double portions would kill him, but now he's here picking up double portions for the alone contestants. You absolutely can't trust what he says. Javier thinks his team is the only one ahead, assuming other teams might have hunted deer, but he might not know yet. Jordan has already left the competition, right? Brian believes they're barely eating enough to survive. If they keep this up daily, they might reach the championship, but Javier wants more protein. It's drizzling, and they've gathered plenty for today. They head back to the shelter to cook lunch and spot Justin's team approaching. Javier has no clue why they're coming. Meanwhile, on Jill's side, Ace plans to watch everything Javier's team does to see if they can be trusted. From his tone, you can sense Ace and Jill's arrogance. And Brian. They had already agreed not to let Justin's team join them. At this point, both allied teams were suspicious of each other. They weren't true allies, but were testing each other's value. After exchanging greetings, Jill got straight to the point. He wanted to start playing strategically and proposed collaborating with Javier's team to eliminate others. Javier was shocked to hear this. Was Jill really that ruthless? Jill planned to actively target other teams. Javier didn't know what to say and could only agree, but he wasn't sure how to proceed. Jill suggested. She proposed tempting members from the other two teams to join them, only to turn around and say that anyone who leaves their team must quit the game. This girl is really cunning. By isolating others with Javier's team, it would eventually come down to a three-way showdown with Javier, giving them a much better chance of winning. This move was brilliant, but Brian insisted he had always been a moral person. Asa and Jill also claimed to be moral. I was so furious with these two girls that I wanted to take off my belt and whip them. If I could, I would whip them both at once to vent my anger until they can't even scream. Brian was completely stunned, and Javier didn't dare to make a sound. Looking at these two women who are more poisonous than poison itself, is this the collapse of morality or the distortion of human nature? Jill knows they're grappling with moral issues, and Justin tells him to put aside morality and play mind games. Javier says he hates competition because it brings out the worst in people.
Put your integrity on pause until we get home.
Until we get home, you can go over there and crush their hopes. Gil's repeated outbursts left Javier stunned. After just 2 weeks of torment, betrayal was already starting. Brian found it disgusting. Justin's team kept pressuring Javier, who eventually made an excuse to leave. They parted ways on bad terms. So, what will Brian decide? At night, the temperature in Alaska dropped to freezing. Brian's team had already reinforced their shelter and were discussing today's events. Once they take that step, Javier was well aware that Justin's team could backtrack at any moment and didn't see them as equals. Today, they also got a clear understanding of Ace and Gil's character. Currently, Nick's team is the strongest, with 4 members. They were happily discussing food like burgers and roast chicken. If someone were to steal their crab traps, they might hit rock bottom instantly. Joel's team is down to just 2 people, with him and Dawn relying on each other. Although they still have some food for now, losing 2 members was a huge blow. This was a huge blow to them, and now they can only encourage each other to keep going. Meanwhile, Justin's team has even darker thoughts. They hope Joel's team loses another member next. Ace suggests stealing their sleeping bags, which is an unprecedentedly wicked idea. If theft becomes a precedent, I doubt any team will sleep peacefully at night. Their team's mindset is constantly challenging my worldview. Indeed, human nature is unpredictable. On the morning of day 16, they started planning. Ace decided to break them mentally, targeting Jordan's team. Having just fired the signal flare, they were at their most vulnerable, a perfect opportunity for an ambush. Today, they decided to sneak into Jordan's camp and steal 3 sleeping bags. At this point, they didn't know that only 2 members were left in Jordan's team. Watching from across the river, they began to strategize. Their first move was to hide themselves, not wanting to be detected. Justin started making camouflage gear using a fishing net, attaching moss and fir branches to it, a common military technique. The river was already starting to recede, with about 30 minutes left until low tide. Justin and Jill were discussing the best time to cross. Another heated argument broke out. Jill was eager to steal the sleeping bags, but Justin insisted on doing it himself. Meanwhile, Joel's team remained oblivious to the looming threat. Dawn planned to forage with Joel, unaware they were being targeted, giving Justin's team a prime chance for a sneak attack. The debate over who should steal continued, with both Justin and Jill wanting the role. If it didn't work out, could they go together? And why not move the other's shelter too? Justin's face looked drained. They moved the raft into the water. The two girls watched from the shore as Justin went for the ambush alone. Jill noticed that Dawn and Joel had left their shelter, prompting Justin to set off immediately. Their actions blew my mind. I always thought wilderness survival shows were dull, but this was thrilling. Meanwhile, Dawn and Joel were foraging, unaware that Justin had reached the middle of the river, drawn by the berries. Justin crossed to the other side, ready to infiltrate their territory. Javier saw him crossing the river. The most intense action is happening right in front of him. Welcome to Guangdong TV. What would you do when someone is caught stealing on the show? What would you do? After landing, Justin carries the raft and walks. What kind of move is this? I thought about it all night and still couldn't figure it out. The two girls see Justin causing trouble and bare their teeth, while Javier calls them wicked women. Justin camouflages his raft with dry grass. What's going on? Am I not watching a wilderness survival show? This feels like Mission Impossible. Meanwhile, Dawn and the others are still exploring, and Justin has already reached their shelter and entered it. After sneaking in, Justin starts grabbing Joel and Dawn's sleeping bags. Meanwhile, Dawn and the others are still exploring and decide to head back after realizing they've gone too far. Justin takes all their warm gear. It's the first time I've seen theft on alone in the wilderness, but there are just so many items. Dawn and the others return nearby, putting Justin at risk of being caught. Dawn is on alert while walking. Justin had already heard their voices, but Dawn seemed unaware. Once they walked away, Justin continued carrying the items. When they returned to the shelter, they found their sleeping bags were gone. They realized someone had stolen them. Dawn quickly went outside to search because the sleeping bags were essential for survival. Joel was so desperate, he was ready to fire a signal flare. Dawn bluntly said he would shoot the flare right at them. The sleeping bags were crucial for their survival. Without them, they would freeze at night. Meanwhile, Luke and Angie were preparing to collect crab traps. They heard Dawn cursing at them, probably thinking they had stolen her sleeping bags. She went to Nick's team's shelter to confront them. Nick, claiming he hadn't stolen anything, explained he had been out collecting supplies all day. Angie also returned to explain, leaving Dawn shocked as she realized she was being targeted. Gaoen couldn't believe someone would cross the river to steal their stuff. Naturally, Nick's team, being the closest, was the first to be suspected. Joel believed Nick's words, and Nick's team swore they hadn't done anything wrong. Joel checked their shelter, and Luke realized other teams were starting to play dirty. In this freezing weather, surviving without a sleeping bag was impossible. Nick reassured them repeatedly they hadn't stolen anything, but Joel's experience made Nick's team aware that there was a thief among the four teams, so they started to guard their own belongings closely. Meanwhile, Justin was still hiding there, and Dawn suspected that only Justin's team had a way to cross the river. Dawn and Joel's conversation was overheard by Justin nearby. Joel saw footprints in the vicinity, and if they caught Justin, would they break his leg? They followed the footprints, and Justin was nearby, feeling extremely nervous. Joel and the others were closing in, and Justin wished he could disappear. He watched Dawn quietly while Asa and Jill laughed hysterically. Justin was stuck with all the hard work as Dawn searched the jungle. He was so scared he barely breathed, but Dawn didn't spot his disguise. He was risking everything for the show. Joel found a raft by the river, and Javier saw it from the other side. Dawn shouted for the thief to return the stolen items. It was awkward. They couldn't find the thief, but they knew which team owned the raft.
What's going on here?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He called out 10 times, but no one came out. Gaoen decided to mess with the raft. Javier, this drama is wild. It needs some sunflower seeds. Without the raft, Justin's team can't catch crabs. Joel misjudged every part of this challenge. Gaoen was sure someone saw, so they checked the camera footage. This is getting exciting. They can review it. Justin, that old fox, might not make it. He has to wait until low tide tonight to cross. They asked the cameraman back at the shelter, but he claimed he saw nothing. They reviewed the footage and confirmed someone from Justin's team was stealing their stuff. It was someone from Justin's team. Joel now feels very pitiful. His team team was the strongest at the start, but now it's just him and Dawn barely hanging on. Justin even dared to sneak out and leave when he saw them in the shelter. Dawn and the others guessed the thief was hiding somewhere. That old guy really isn't afraid of death. He returned to the raft, which was already damaged. He couldn't wait for the tide to go out. He planned to catch the tide back. Justin realized he had to swim over, or he'd really get killed if he stayed. He moved the raft into the water and put his stuff on it. He strips down and drags everything back. Oh my god, this is just too intense. History. How much are you paying him? My treasure hunter channel will pay you 3 times more. Can you come to my show for some drama? Javier starts to fear Justin's group, thinking they will steal from everyone next. After Justin crosses the river, he and Dawn shout to Javier, deciding not to ally with them anymore. Meanwhile, Joel's team is still figuring out how to get through the night, and Javier is utterly baffled by Justin's actions. Justin has caused enough chaos today that they're discussing if anyone will quit the competition. This move has undoubtedly opened Pandora's box, and an uncontrollable battle for resources is about to erupt. Nick's team is calling Justin's team trash, and now every team hates Justin's group. They've practically become public enemy number 1. So, how will they respond next? Stay tuned for the next episode. In their quest for the $1 million prize, these 2 women sabotaged their competitors by dismantling their shelters. They confronted their opponents directly, forcing them to quit. What drives their ruthlessness? In the last episode, Justin's team executed a shocking ambush on Joel's team, stealing their sleeping bags to freeze them out of the competition. This move by Justin opened Pandora's box, igniting an even fiercer battle for the $1 million prize. After losing their sleeping bags, Joel's team revamped their shelter, reigniting their survival spirit. Nick's team is now more alert, creating new plans to fend off potential ambushes from rivals. When his teammates went out to work, he stayed behind to guard the shelter. Now, Javier is starting to feel troubled. Since he and Brian are allied with Justin's team, which started the challenge, Javier is worried about getting into trouble. As allies, if Justin's team faces retaliation, Javier's team will inevitably be implicated. After returning to the shelter, Javier told Justin what he saw today. Brian was so shocked that his jaw dropped. Brian holds the moral high ground and strongly opposes such actions. Now, all the teams see Justin's group as the villains. Joel's team holds a grudge, and Nick's team has criticized their actions. Even their ally, Javier's team, is starting to pull away. Javier thinks they are acting like mad dogs, and Brian is starting to doubt their character. Consider this. In a $1 million competition, and Justin's team has the most women. Women's desire for money can surpass that of men. If only women were playing, they'd likely win. Javier thinks they had this nature even before the competition. Even without any conflicts, they could do such things to others. Javier believes they have revealed their true nature. Brian also realizes that Justin's team won't let them survive until the end. Their suspicions are correct. Due to their clashing personalities, conflicts and fights are inevitable. Spoiler: Javier's team won't make it through this episode. Fans curious about why can keep watching. Right now, Justin's team is the villains. The temperature has dropped to near freezing at night. Joel's team, now without sleeping bags, is in a dire situation with only the clothes on their backs for warmth. Joel and Dawn drink water to stay warm, place heated stones under their bed, and cover themselves with waterproof cloth. The temperature keeps falling, now at -1 degree Celsius, 30 degrees Fahrenheit. They shiver uncontrollably from the cold. Sleeping at night is impossible. The cold makes their hearts race and muscles tremble to generate heat. This drains their energy significantly, leaving them very uncomfortable. Dawn doubts she can endure another night. They don't want to join other teams. Facing the increasingly cold environment, how will they survive? It's day 17, and the morning temperature is -2 degrees Celsius. Joel's team survived the night with ice forming outside their shelter. They think it must have hit -6 degrees last night. The 2 villains are already gloating this morning.
I have peace in my mind knowing, respectfully and fairly, played this game honorably.
Upon waking, Brian found last night extremely tough and criticized the 2 women's actions.
Not alpha, and eventually end this thing.
Brian is now in a moral dilemma. His behavior this morning is quite strange. What is he planning to do? Brian states he refuses to be part of Justin's team and their actions, so he decides to leave the challenge. Brian slowly loads the signal flare. He is well aware that Javier is just trying to persuade him to stay forever. So Brian feels that everything here is for profit. The other teams also saw the signal flare. Nick's and Joel's teams are surprised. Only Justin's team is pleased, sensing they're closer to victory. They quickly deduce Brian fired the flare. As allies, they have no intention of taking in Javier. Jill thinks it's foolish for him to quit over so-called morals. He only cares about his family's opinion, not others. Next, Haber needs to find a team to join. Otherwise, he'll have to quit, and Joel's team is his only option. Haber has a crab trap, and if he brings it over, can it turn the tide for Joel's team? Currently, Joel's only resources are the raft and crab bait. To survive, they need more protein. Nick's team has plenty of crab traps, but there's tension between the teams. Joel plans to ask Haber to join. If it works out, it could be a game changer. The show's helicopter appears again. At this moment, Haber is unaware of Brian's withdrawal. The crew drops off a box and leaves. Haber finds only a letter inside, left by Brian. Seeing this, I was speechless. Brian could have just told Haber in person. Did he really need to call the helicopter again? Maybe the show's budget is just that big. If they have so much money, why not give me more ad revenue? Please, let me deliver the next letter. Can the leftover helicopter budget go to my ad fees? After reading the letter, Haber has to reconsider his team choice. Haber is upset about Brian leaving so suddenly, feeling he deserved a personal goodbye. Holding his hand and saying goodbye. Even wilderness experts have a sensitive side. In this moment, Haber exudes an irresistible charm. Next, he decides to continue the challenge with a sense of justice. While he's lost in thought, Joel calls out to him from a distance. They communicate using binoculars.
Hole, rumored to spawn trout and coho salmon. This may be their last shot on protein. Before winning, they will have to expend their time-grueling hike.
It's a lot of calories. We have no
Are you on our side or
There's a
theirs?
high
I'm coming to
possibility
you. We were
they
just
won't
thinking about
catch
our
up.
neighbors. I have a plan. Come over here. Can you make it? We're coming.
Which means Joel's
Okay.
and possibly some mental spot on the team.
Receiving Brian's letter within a minute felt like a miracle. Ha ha ha, I never expected that the first thing Haber and Joel would discuss was distancing themselves from Justin's team. They realize they must cut ties to integrate better. Haber joins Joel's team, and they strategize for survival. Haber calls them over because he plans to retrieve the sleeping bags with Joel's team. Haber's joining signals the beginning of Joel's team's retaliation against Justin's team. Brian's letter threw him into despair, but Joel's invitation lifted him back to heaven. This rollercoaster of emotions is truly exhilarating. They plan to meet officially at dawn. Nick's team sees a strong alliance forming, while on Justin's side, Jill is practicing archery. They are hatching another grand scheme. Justin's team may not be the strongest, but they remain the most confident. Without a proper meal for 2 weeks, Justin thinks he's lost weight. Is he misunderstanding something? He's practically a skeleton now. Jill is now heading to hunt on Puxalan Island. Those two girls are the worst. After the morning meeting, Jill heads to the island alone to hunt. He brought quite a bit of gear. The scenery here amazes him, and he also finds Paul hunting here. They greet each other. Paul says he's now part of Nick's team and tells Jill that Jordan has quit the competition. Jill is shocked to hear this. After this exchange, Jill understands Joel's team's situation better. He also learns that Haber has joined Joel's team. Now, Jill knows everything. Outwardly, Jill is surprised, but inwardly, he's ecstatic. Paul then brings up the theft of Joel's sleeping bags. Jill glances down, chuckling. Jill can't keep it together in the face of Paul's smarts. She finally comes clean, and Paul figures out it was them. But Paul thinks they are very capable and suggests forming a secret alliance with Jill. Paul has once again blown my mind. Indeed, betrayal is like cheating. It can happen once or repeatedly. Paul betrayed Joel's team first, and now he's turning on Nick's team. Jill surprisingly teams up with an insider, making him as thrilled as hunting a deer. Paul then proposes. They must eliminate 2 different teams. This implies they need to eliminate Joel's team and then dismantle Nick's team. Then Paul would join Justin's team to win the prize. Paul's plan seems perfect, but Justin immediately says. Justin refuses to accept anyone from a rival team, leaving Paul in a tough spot. Determined to win, Paul joins the hunt. They follow deer tracks and, based on the deer's habits, choose to hunt separately. However, Jill suggests, to avoid the team going hungry, he decides to hunt some squirrels first. He spots a target and takes aim. Unfortunately, he misses. He sees another squirrel, picks up his bow, and aims again. He misses again. But the squirrel is still nearby. Jill continues to track it. On his 3rd shot, he successfully hits the squirrel. Jill becomes the first to hunt some protein. Although it's just a small squirrel, it's enough to make a pot of soup. What surprised me was that Jill cried over taking the life of the little squirrel. She actually cried for a squirrel. Even a crocodile would be haunted by her tears as she skinned the squirrel with her hands, her sadness palpable. The small squirrel became a lump of meat. Jill returned with it, marking a successful trip. She returned with fresh meat for her team. These villains have excelled, at least they have food now. Jose began preparing dinner, feeling sure of victory. Jill mentioned seeing Paul, but her teammates were already aware. Joel's team plotted with Javier for a counterattack, which thrilled Jose. This meant more work for Justin. They were also surprised that Paul had joined Nick's team, but Paul secretly allied with them. All this information meant a great advantage for Justin's team. Next, they planned to eliminate Joel's team and Javier. They were so happy. All because of Paul, the catalyst. On the 18th day, Justin's team began to plot to eliminate their neighbor and former ally, Javier. They witnessed Javier talking to Joel by the shore, planning to meet Joel on the island. The two girls saw all of this. The girls planned to steal Javier's sleeping bag and dismantle Javier's shelter so their team could stay on their own. Meanwhile, Joel's team started their base station plan, taking some valuable items before heading to the island. They planned with Javier to move the shelter to the island. Everyone was packing up. Javier moved the raft to the riverbank. Justin's team was urgently planning a new attack. They were very afraid of Joel and Dawn coming over. To stop Joel's team, they had to destroy Javier's shelter. Once Joel's team arrived, Justin's shelter would be in great danger. So, facing Javier and Joel's merger plan, what actions would Justin's team take? Dawn called Nick's team over to help move their raft into the river. Javier knew Justin's team would resist. Jose's team was closely monitoring everything, ready to sabotage at any moment. Joel transported the first batch of supplies as Javier prepared the raft. Two wolves watched from the shore. Javier planned to use a rope to pull Joel over. The two girls finally couldn't sit still. Right now, Javier is quietly working on a rope as Jill and Jose slip into the jungle behind him. Luke witnesses Jill and her team executing their plan, directly stealing Javier's belongings, forcing Javier to run home. Jose and his team aren't just stealing, they're openly robbing. They start taking things right in front of Javier. Javier sits helplessly on the ground, guarding his belongings. Jose threatens him, saying he should either fire a signal flare to quit the game, or he should move to Joel's team, but he can't stay here. People on the opposite shore are watching this terrible scene unfold. Jill confronts Javier while Jose quietly slips away to the shore to sabotage Javier's raft. Dawn shouts from the opposite shore, saying if they can openly rob, why not wait for Joel to come and burn down Justin's team's shelter? Why don't they directly retaliate against the attacks? By now, Jose has already punctured Javier's raft. Justin's team is destroying things in front of everyone, and Nick's team is shocked. Joel is in utter despair. One thing after another hits him. Javier is at a loss facing these robbers. From my omniscient perspective, I could easily write a script to make Justin's team disappear from the show, fast forwarding to the finale. But I can't do that because my fans want to keep watching. After a standoff with Jill, Javier decides to move his things and leave. But Jose has already wrecked Javier's raft. Javier carries his belongings to the shore, where Joel invites him to come over and rebuild. Suddenly, it starts to drizzle. Javier, facing Joel's invitation, stands still as if he has a revelation. He realizes he can't let these two girls bully him. He sprints back, resolved to take back what's his. Meanwhile, Joel, with the last raft among the teams, hesitates to come ashore. Jill's team is already tearing down Javier's shelter. Javier hopes Joel's team will come to help defend it. Before leaving, Dawn also dismantled her shelter, so now they must protect Javier's shelter. Javier is still arguing with Jose. If it were me, I'd just grab him and say, "Princess," into the water and throw him away. Dawn suggests it's not about the game, but about who can be more ruthless. I didn't see the plot twist coming so fast. Joel and Dawn are fed up and thinking about quitting. Meanwhile, Javier still hopes Joel will help. Dawn takes the raft over, and once Jose completes his sabotage, he boldly walks away. Jill has already destroyed Javier's shelter. Jill had already shredded Javier's shelter. Just two girls caused such a huge commotion. Joel's team finally reunited with Javier, but Javier learned that Joel and Dawn had decided to quit. He was momentarily speechless. Despite Javier's pleas, they were determined to leave. In just one day, Javier found himself constantly oscillating between heaven and hell. An average person would likely break down from this emotional rollercoaster. The game's upheaval was incredibly swift. Everything happened so quickly because, ever since Luke and Jordan left 18 days ago, fate has been uncontrollable. Joel and Dawn quitting means two teams vanish from the game. They refuse to be forced into thievery by the thieves. Maybe their principles prevented them from continuing. Today, Javier saw two flares go up. Previously, seeing the flares brought him joy. Now, they left him empty. Javier felt it had turned into a personal vendetta. He couldn't let the bullies win. Meanwhile, Justin's team was overjoyed. They had the most sleeping bags now. Not giving up is enough. Javier returns to his shelter to organize his things. His only option now is to cross the river. praying to join Nick's team. He wonders if they'll accept him. If Javier successfully joins the team, the next step will be a clash between the teams. Despite all Javier has endured, he hasn't lost faith in himself. I really admire him for that. Meanwhile, Justin's team is gearing up for another round of attacks. Jill said they must quickly destroy Javier's shelter, or Nick's team will come and scavenge it. They plan to completely erase Javier's shelter from here, but Javier doesn't intend to stay either. He had already taken apart his shelter. If he hadn't, Justin and his team would have done it for him. Before Javier left, it was decided to burn down this shelter and never leave anything for Justin's team when Javier burned down the shelter. Justin and his team are already on their way. Javier watched as the shelter he had painstakingly built was now being torn down by his own hands. Despite his deep reluctance, he was powerless to stop it. How exciting is wilderness survival? They fished tirelessly, hauling in one hefty trout after another, each over 10 pounds. They grilled and savored the fish, even making smoked fish. They turned survival into a vacation. In the last episode, Javier was forced by Justin's team. He originally planned to merge with Joel's team, but due to Justin's team's bad behavior, Joel and Dawn, based on their moral principles, decided to quit the competition rather than be forced to act like them. Javier had no choice but to burn down his shelter and seek to join Nick's team across the river. If Nick's team didn't accept him, Javier would have to quit the competition. Meanwhile, Justin's team was discussing how Javier would definitely retaliate, but his plans had already been thwarted by Justin's team, so he had to take a detour. To find Nick's team, Justin's team was already planning further steps, seizing the opportunity to raid Javier's shelter. Jill said she didn't feel guilty and even thought Javier was too scary to stay nearby. With that said, I couldn't tell who was scarier. Okay, that's why you?
You gotta cheat and steal to win.
Okay.
That's why you're desperate and steal.
I'm not desperate.
Everybody on this camera can see that. What the is
No.
wrong with you? It's cheating.
There is
Justin's
no
team
wall
arrived
This is
here.
America. You're in the US of A, lady. No.
They found that Javier had already burned down his shelter and thought he had burned it down to prevent them from using it. These bandits were refreshing my worldview at 120 Hz, hoping Javier was hiding under the wood. Jill believed Paul had already allied with him, using Paul as a spy to start dismantling Nick's team. They were very confident in their victory, boasting about wiping out everyone. If this were a survival show, I believe Justin's team would be the worst. If it were about moral standards or who was the most despicable, then Justin's team would undoubtedly be the best. However, Nick's team was already waiting for Javier. Javier hoped to join them and retaliate against Justin's team. He said he wanted to join their team only to settle his personal grudges. Once resolved, he would quit the competition, leaving the remaining prize money to the four of them. Javier made it clear that he wanted to stay to settle personal scores and would quit once he dealt with them. So, what would Nick's team decide?
Do you mind if we talk for Give us 2 seconds, man.
Yeah.
Nick's team privately discussed and understood Javier's determination, but Paul, the spy, didn't want Javier to join. They unanimously decided to avenge Javier and Joel's team, but didn't want to expand their team, so they rejected Javier. Nick said letting Javier join would anger Justin's team. They wanted to avoid conflict. Why were they so scared of Justin's team? Just 2 girls caused such chaos, showing how timid men can be in the wild. If the guys from the comment section were here, Justin's team wouldn't last a night. Javier, faced with their decision, had countless questions and ultimately quit. He was likely the most regretful contestant this season, probably even more than Brother Yuan. Javier believed his skills could win, but maybe the $1 million prize was too tempting, leading to desperate measures. In the end, he vented his frustration to the sky, a moment only he might understand.
Like it's your last. Say your prayer.
In the end, Javier shouted his frustration and regret to the sky. Only he knew what that outburst truly meant. Nick's team thought they had made a good plan, unaware of the huge danger still lurking. If they knew Paul was a spy, they might have replaced Paul with Javier. After Javier quit, only 2 teams remained. Nick's team believed Jill was a very strong player and didn't dare to retaliate against Justin's team. Luke kept saying he wanted to finish the competition fairly. I thought they would use tough methods to retaliate, but they proposed recruiting Jill, which would force Justin and Ace to quit. This team's idea was really naive. They were too cowardly. Nick's team was really afraid of dying but greedy for money. They even thought they could recruit Jill and were prematurely happy. Only Paul had a different idea. Paul was Justin's team spy, and Nick's plan would definitely be reported to Justin's team. On day 22, Justin went out hunting early. Nick's team proposed recruiting Jill last night, so Paul suggested going hunting on the other side and recruiting Jill. Jill also planned to hunt in the jungle, where he and Paul secretly talked. Ace and Jill were now extremely confident, relying on Jill to hunt for food every day. Jill had already eliminated Joel's team and Javier's team, and now he and Paul were planning to eliminate Nick's team. Paul was the only insider this season, and he had previously stated he only wanted the prize money. After meeting, they celebrated their victory, proud of using tactics to eliminate opponents. Jill was happy about his moral decline, unaware that he was already notorious in the wilderness community. Paul told Jill that Nick's team had a spot for him. Jill said he had a close partnership with Ace, and Paul also wanted Jill to join, which would speed up the competition and get the prize money home. But he didn't know that even if Nick's team lost, Jill's team wouldn't take Paul in. Facing this big asterisk, Jill almost cried. Paul had already planned to buy a house with the prize money, but he might have a hard time accepting Jill's betrayal of his teammates. To shorten the competition, having Jill join Nick's team was the fastest way. If they continued to fight, someone might quit due to hunger, and winning wouldn't be up to them. Now, $1 million decision was in front of him. What would he do? This conversation was very interesting. Paul and Jill faced a choice. Who would betray? If Paul betrayed, someone might quit due to hunger. If Jill betrayed, the competition would be shortened. They couldn't decide, so Jill needed to think it over. They decided to discuss it again tomorrow. Soon, the show's helicopter appeared, dropping a package with new map information. The salmon had reached the spawning area, and they could go to the northern lake to catch salmon. Before winter came, it was best to collect more salmon as reserve food. Both teams received fishing tools and immediately started fishing. The fishing season was ending, and once winter came, food would become scarce. Both teams had no food and had to fish. Justin's team planned to fish tomorrow, delaying Jill and Paul's spy plan. However, Justin and Ace were plotting a new plan, but Jill's expression was different. He started thinking about joining Nick's team. Faced with Justin and Ace's plan, he was distracted and said they should fish first and talk after eating. The $1 million prize was too tempting for Jill, driven by money. Thinking about betrayal made him want to cry, but thinking about money made him want to laugh. On day 23, Nick's team set out early to fish. It was a long-distance hike, and all four of them went fishing. If Justin's team attacked now and burned their shelter, they could force the team to quit. But Justin's team also decided to fish, not because they couldn't think of it, but because the fishing task was just announced by the show yesterday. If Justin's team attacked Nick's team today, it would end the game, and the director didn't want the game to end so quickly. Ending the competition so soon would leave my fans with nothing to watch in the bathroom, unable to poop. They saw bear tracks on the ground, and the trout were spawning, which was also the season for black bears to eat fish. Black bears would feast and then hibernate. Nick's team reached the lake first and eagerly started fishing. Fish was crucial for their survival and the key to continuing the competition. They quickly caught the first fish, but the fish slipped off the hook, which only made them more eager to fish. Just then, Justin's team showed up. If this were a fishing contest, Nick's team would have the upper hand with their numbers. But fishing is all about luck, and having more people doesn't guarantee success. AC dropped the fishing line into the water, and Angie worried it would scare the fish away. Luke soon caught a big fish, enough for one meal. Being the first to catch a fish boosted Luke's confidence, especially as he watched the other team catch fish. Naturally, he felt upset as Nick's team kept reeling in fish, making Jill furious. This might spark his jealousy and make him reconsider joining Nick's team. Angie bragged after catching a fish, while Justin's team had no luck. Nick's team was catching fish so quickly that Jill thought it must be feng shui. He decided to change spots, with one pair in a bright area and another in a dark one. They were using such thick ropes, it looked more like dog walking than fishing. Jill couldn't stand seeing others do better. She believed she was the best at fishing, but her luck wasn't great without sunlight. He thought he was the best at fishing, but his luck was bad because he was in a shady spot. Angie cleaned their catch, and Nick tried the fresh fish roe, making Jill insanely jealous. The roe tasted like butter. Soon, Jill's team caught a fish, and it was a big one, at least 10 pounds. Jill showed off and quickly caught another. Their fish kept getting bigger. Ace also caught a huge fish, much larger than Nick's team's. They proudly displayed their catch, They were shouting and cheering. Nick's team caught 1 or 2 fish today, each weighing around 3 pounds, while Justin's team caught 3 fish, each weighing about 9 pounds. Overall, it was a bountiful harvest. Jill had a new idea while looking at Nick's team. If he brought the fish he caught to Nick's team, he would surely win. Now, he faced a very difficult choice. Both teams have caught enough fish to last a week, and they'll decide how to divide it tonight. Justin's team is grilling fish in their shelter, with Ace savoring every bite and confidently claiming victory, unaware of an impending betrayal. With $1 million at stake, who needs friends? Nick's team is also enjoying their fish, and their morale is high after a hearty meal. They seem pretty naive and sweet to me. Moving on to day 14. On day 14, Nick's team decides to turn crab traps into a smoker for the leftover fish. Seriously, are they building a giant smoker just for fish? They hang 3 traps, and last night's smoked fish feast. It helped them recover, but Angie started feeling unwell. He had severe stomach pain and revealed he hadn't pooped in over 20 days. His teammates were stunned. 24 days without pooping. What kind of superhuman is this? Paul was also shocked. Since the competition started, Angie hadn't pooped at all. Angie was the epitome of suffering, not even daring to poop, and seeing him in such pain. Paul offered to help. Was he planning to dig out Angie's poop? If Angie had to quit due to health reasons, it would leave just Nick and Luke, because Paul would definitely switch sides immediately. The show's crew judged that Angie might have a risk of intestinal perforation, which could be life-threatening. Angie was taken out for a medical checkup. Seriously, 24 days without pooping? Angie might not come back this time. If he does return, it would be a real shame that Jordan had to quit earlier due to health issues. Meanwhile, Justin's team was planning their next move. With 13 kilograms of fish, the only way to preserve it longer is to dry it out. These 2 big fish could last a single person a long time. Ace is enjoying some fish roe sashimi, which tastes absolutely delicious. Now they have plenty of food, which will undoubtedly extend the competition. Jill doesn't like eating the fish roe. He's more focused on betraying his team, feeling increasingly unmotivated to work. He even thinks Nick's team can't win without him. Look at what he's saying. It's not just arrogance. It's like the competition was made for him. After lighting the fire, he passed the fish smoking duty to his teammates. Ose was in a great mood, dreaming about how he'd spend the prize money. This girl looked worse every day. Turns out he was a recovering drug addict with a criminal past. He joined the challenge just for the cash, which explained his skills. He felt grateful to Jill, believing their chances of winning were better with him. Honestly, none of them were good people. Jill grilled the fish, slicing it into thin strips and placing them on the iron net. The dried smoked fish could be preserved for a long time. By day 25, Nick's team had smoked the fish overnight, making it incredibly tempting. Now, they had meat to eat every day. If they had no other plans, they could just outlast the other team to win. Soon, a helicopter appeared again. Seeing it, I knew what was up. It was definitely delivering a message. They realized it too, and sure enough, there was a letter inside. Paul started crying again, as he always did, which really cracked me up. With Angie quitting, their chances of winning had dropped again. Castin said he saw a flare gun, but Jill insisted it was impossible. Of course, he didn't want to see a flare gun because it would make his decision even harder. Now that both sides had equal numbers, Nick's team no longer had the advantage. So, what would Jill choose? Nick's team was already in agony. They had a great chance of winning, but if they found out Paul was a spy, they'd probably go crazy. Nick wanted to recruit Jill quickly, and Paul volunteered to approach him. Luke and the others were still optimistic, thinking they could attract Jill to their team, but Nick said. After the tide receded in the morning, Nick's team decided to gather supplies and invite Jill directly. On day 26, they wrote a note, placed it in a pen tube, and planned to send it to Jill using a fishing line. They went to the riverbank hoping to meet Jill, but only ran into Justin. Meanwhile, Jill was collecting supplies in the distance, and Paul used a bow and arrow to send the message to Jill. They stood on the shore, inviting Jill to join their team. However, Ace, who was secretly observing, noticed their interaction. Although he couldn't hear their conversation, he guessed what they were discussing in the final stages of the competition. The camera seemed to catch on to their conversation. Ace's expression was downright scary. No one wanted to endure the winter here. Nick pressed Jill for a decision, but Jill, who doesn't handle pressure well, might provoke Ace to be even more ruthless. Jill made it clear he wasn't here to make friends, he was here for the money. How will Ace react? Find out in the next episode. 2 women, vying for $1 million prize, accused their teammate of stealing their grilled fish and made him swear on his daughter's life. Upset by their actions, he dismantled the shelter and took his belongings. With temperatures dropping below freezing at night, their survival became uncertain. Sometimes, catching too many fish can backfire. In the previous episode, Angie suffered from severe constipation after overeating fish, leading to his removal from the game for medical examination. With Angie gone, Nick's team felt their chances of winning had diminished and attempted to recruit Jill from Justin's team. On the morning of day 26, Nick approached Jill directly to join their team. However, Jill, being a strong-willed person, initially considered joining but felt it was better to maintain some dignity, leading to an argument.
You want to be out here past December? We'll just...
The stupidest question I've ever heard from a crowd.
We will win this in the end. Trust us, it's only been a day. So think about it and make your decision right there on the spot. You asking me to betray her makes me feel so conflicted. We are the strongest team. We didn't come here to make friends. We're playing this game to win. You know the offer is the quickest way into the game. We want you here for a 50-50 shot, and you get to hold your team together. Don't you think I know you're trying to cut the head off this snake? I won't leave without winning this game. Today is the day, and she's not even here.
I'm not leaving her.
Well, fair enough. Okay.
That's not a negotiation. I will not be giving
Okay,
up
I get what Jill means. If you want me to join, fine, but don't be so blunt about it. You need to coax me in so I can save face. Otherwise, people will say I joined you just to win. If word gets out, Bear Grylls and Ed Stafford will laugh their heads off. It sounds like staying here means certain defeat. So, Jill ultimately chose to stay with Justin's team, and the two teams are now completely at odds. When Jill returned to the shelter, he told his teammates about today's events, saying that Nick's team wanted to invite him over to secure a win. Jill's honesty with his teammates actually meant he wouldn't betray them. On the surface, his teammates showed loyalty to the team, but in reality, it was just a matter of pride. Nick's team had been too aggressive, implying that Jill could only win by joining them. While Jill and Justin were talking, Asa was listening nearby, possibly forming his own thoughts. Despite Jill's honesty, Justin made it clear he wouldn't trust anyone. Everyone's aiming for that $1 million. Their once strong relationships are now showing cracks. Justin doubted this was Jill's first chat with Nick's team. Jill tried to explain, but his teammates saw it as acting, making him seem unreliable. Justin eventually went off to do other tasks, while Jill kept trying to prove his sincerity to Asa. After today's events, his teammates started to be wary of him.
And I think that what I just told you, and I don't mean to sound hateful.
Think about what I just told you, and I don't mean to sound hateful. It's just from my heart that I'm willing to put my life on the line in this game for you, and I will prove to you that I'm 100% committed. Okay, I believe you. However, Nick's team failed to recruit Jill, and for a moment, they didn't know what to do. Will Paul betray Nick's team? Even Sun Wukong couldn't see through this. Now, Nick's new plan is to drag it out with the other team. Paul also wanted to finish the game quickly, but since Jill didn't join, they can only take it step by step. Nick proposed recruiting Justin. Oh my god, I see their plan now. Even if opponents don't join, trying to recruit them disrupts the other team's morale. Brilliant move. Meanwhile, Justin is still out there working hard, doing all the dirty and tiring tasks for the two girls. Jill noticed the meat reserves depleting faster than expected, and Asa suspected Justin of stealing food.
They're gone. Don't know where they went. Hunger does some crazy
On
stuff.
So all over they went hunger. That's some crazy stuff to you, right? Just be kind of acting sneakily. Just there's been times where he's been kind of taking more than his share. When we eat our dinner, all of this fish is supposed to go to the game, but he ends up taking pieces and putting them aside. What are you doing? It really cracks me up. Justin actually stealing food from his own team. Damn. If Nick's team knew, they'd probably laugh their heads off. Jill thinks Justin has changed, and they keep mocking him. Poor Justin, stuck with these two girls, he's really out of luck. Jill decides to manage the supplies separately. A flock of vultures appears near the shelter, and it would be a waste not to hunt them. Jill grabs a bow and starts hunting, but misses. The vultures keep stealing food. By nightfall, Nick's team is enjoying a grilled fish dinner, with temperatures dropping to freezing. It's now day 27, and Jill and Asa head out early to hunt. Justin's diarrhea is loud and persistent. He feels extremely uncomfortable, fearing that if this continues, he might not make it. He suspects the salmon is to blame. After over 20 days of hunger, finally getting to eat some fish only to end up with diarrhea is a cruel twist. Asa and Jill are always whispering together, making Justin feel like an outsider, as if they don't want to include him. Justin has never felt quite right in the team, which was evident even when they were building the raft. Justin believed they were bad-mouthing him, and one night, he overheard them. The two girls said he stole fish, and if this rumor spread, it would definitely become the talk of the town. This made him feel some resentment. In fact, the two girls had indeed been badmouthing Justin behind his back. As teammates, their behavior showed their poor character. They walked and discussed, saying they never thought Justin would steal their food and that they would never trust a word he said again. Jill believed Justin was untrustworthy. The two women were collecting water while constantly badmouthing Justin. They had been doing this since the first episode, showing their inherently poor character. In the morning, when they went out to forage, Jill deliberately placed her food by her bedside to see if Justin would steal it. After all, Asa despised Justin the most and found him the most repulsive. Now, they returned to the shelter to see if Justin had taken the bait, while Nick's team was preparing to recruit Justin. Luke and Paul go outside to look for Justin. I can't understand why they are being so timid with Jill and Asa. Why not handle them the way they usually do? They sit by the shore, searching for Justin like they're looking for a lost puppy. Meanwhile, back at Justin's team, Jill and Asa return to find their carefully arranged bag has been tampered with. Testing Justin shows extreme distrust in a teammate. If I were Justin, I'd take everything and join Nick's team as soon as they leave. That way, not only could I win the prize, but also teach those two women a lesson. The two girls accused Justin of stealing their stuff right to his face. At first, Justin was completely baffled. He explained that he didn't want to eat their fish, he just had a stomachache and had already soiled his pants. He moved their bags to find something to clean up but didn't take anything. Despite Justin's explanations, Jill didn't believe him. This scene was very similar to yesterday. Yesterday, Jill kept explaining and Justin looked just as disbelieving. Today, Jill started to take revenge on Justin. Jill brought up the same accusation Justin denied last night. Judging by Justin's expression, I believe he's truly innocent. I'd trust Justin over those two girls any day. Luke and Paul watched the argument unfold, and Paul saw no hope as the girls kept calling Justin a liar and a thief. Justin argued they shouldn't waste energy on internal conflicts. Last night, the temperature dropped to freezing, and the girls hogged the sleeping bag Justin had taken. He nearly froze, but didn't complain. Now, with the girls accusing him, it felt like the farmer and the snake story. No matter what Justin said, they wouldn't believe him. He might as well take his stuff and leave or even burn down the shelter and join Nick's team to win the prize money and go home. They forced Justin to swear on his daughter's life before letting it go. Justin realized the girls wanted to get rid of him or force him to quit. He couldn't stand their bullying anymore. Justin found Luke and Paul, which was exactly what Luke wanted. Justin said Jill and Asa were in cahoots, trying to push him out. He mentioned that Asa did nothing and just depended on Jill for everything. The worst part was their accusation of theft. Justin shared all this with Luke and the others, and Luke seized the chance to invite him to their team. However, Justin informed Nick that he would join his team and planned to move today. Justin was shocked by Luke's offer, never expecting a troublemaker like him to be welcomed. Luke advised him to come quietly to avoid any drama. Meanwhile, Jill and Asa went out to forage. Justin had only a short window to return to the shelter and move his things. Initially, he hadn't planned to defect, but Asa and Jill's attitude left him no reason to stay. If the two girls caught him, he wouldn't be able to leave. Once back at the shelter, Justin started dismantling it. He just wanted to finish the game quickly and take the prize money home to his daughter. After grabbing his belongings, he left. When Jill and Asa returned and saw the damage, they found the shelter's roof dismantled and cursed Justin continuously. The two women thought Justin was crazy. In their eyes, they were the only good ones, and everyone else was bad. Basically, they only ever spoke ill of others. Jill was furious that Justin would do such a thing to someone he knew. It was clear she was a hypocrite. Hadn't she done the same to their ally Javier before? Now that it was happening to her, she couldn't take it. As they repaired the shelter, they kept bad-mouthing Justin, wondering why he didn't just set the shelter on fire. Wouldn't that have guaranteed his win? Justin took his things and trekked 8 kilometers to find Nick's team. Luke came to meet him, and Justin successfully joined Nick's team. Meanwhile, Jill and Asa were fixing the shelter, knowing they had to finish by nightfall because temperatures would drop below freezing. Why didn't they just take their sleeping bags? Treating them the same way would be better, right? Jill said Justin's actions were purely personal. She was really hypocritical, thinking only she could do such things. Jill and Asa began to plot their revenge. They decided to write a letter to Nick's team, warning them that Justin wouldn't be honest with them. Clearly, they wanted to incite internal conflict within Nick's team. These two women had been complaining about and bad-mouthing Justin from the start.
Is this who you
Are these the
want to
rules?
finish
Is this who
with.
you want to
He
finish with?
stole
And he stole our food too. He stole gear, destroyed and raided our supplies. The ball is in their court now. The truth is out. Watching these two women talk, I really thought they were too self-righteous. They shot the letter across the river, and he felt like crying again, crocodile tears. So, will these two venomous women succeed in stirring up conflict within Nick's team? Stay tuned for the next episode. A new season of Alone in the Wilderness has begun, featuring 16 survival experts in the Alaskan wilderness. They strive to find food and face both joy and sorrow, all aiming for the ultimate prize of $1 million. The competition is fierce, driven by the desire of previous episodes. After Justin joined Nick's team, Jill and Osse were furious. They planned to document Justin's so-called crimes and inform Nick's team. These crimes included Justin taking his own belongings and dismantling his shelter, leaving nothing for them. In Jill and Osse's eyes, Justin's actions were despicable, even though he was merely reclaiming his own stuff. They saw it as theft and tried to stir up trouble within Nick's team. They fancied themselves as some kind of enforcers, thinking they could send Justin packing just by saying so. They even claimed that accepting Justin would break the game rules, conveniently forgetting their own treatment of Javier. Honestly, I felt like giving them a good whipping. They thought this would stop Justin from joining Nick's team, but Nick's team just ignored them. When Justin arrived at Nick's shelter, it was a classic enemy of my enemy is my friend situation. Nick's team was thrilled to have an extra member. Having one more person meant a lot to them, and Justin received a warm welcome. Not only did he have a seat, but he also had food to eat. Paul had already guessed that Jill would try to stir up trouble. Justin shared the situation on Jill's side with Nick's team. When Nick asked about Osse, Justin described him as a lost puppy, very loyal to Jill, but without any plans to take the initiative. It seemed like they just wanted to drag things out. For Paul, having another hunter on their team was a big plus. Paul and Justin went out hunting together, as the area was now fully frosted over. The area was completely frost-covered, and they planned to look for deer tracks, hoping to hunt a deer. Meanwhile, Nick and Luke kept a close eye on the two girls, fearing a surprise attack. They found Jill's bow and saw the messages they had written, clearly trying to incite internal strife. After you accepted Justin, he stole gear and has been stealing food from our team. He's been cheating by destroying and raiding our camp. Are these the rules you all want to play by? Do you think I should trust Charlie? Don't trust her one bit. She's been manipulative. I don't trust Jill as far as I can throw her. Clearly, Luke and Nick don't believe a word of it. As the saying goes, a woman's mouth is full of lies. Given Jill's previous actions, Nick thinks they have no right to say these things. Paul and Justin go hunting, but come back empty-handed again. Luke and Nick return to the shelter, seeing deer tracks and droppings everywhere, but no deer in sight. When they got back, Justin could tell something was up from the looks on Nick and Luke's faces. Luke explained what happened during their outing and handed Justin a letter to read. It was obvious this was Jill's doing. Justin said he only took his own things, but the letter accused him of dismantling their shelter. Justin claimed he only took down his half, but this caused a trust crisis within Nick's team. They had to reconsider Justin's character and morals. In the end, they decided Justin's actions were too wrong, and they were determined to uphold their moral high ground. So, they decided to reject Justin's inclusion. Seeing them make this decision almost made my blood boil. Justin taking his own things wasn't wrong, but Jill's letter accused him of stealing and dismantling their shelter. Morally, Nick's team couldn't stand someone they saw as so bad. Faced with this decision, I was speechless. Just like Justin, Jill's devious plan had succeeded, and now Justin faced the choice of leaving the competition, as Jill's team wouldn't take him back. Meanwhile, on the other side, the two girls were grinning from ear to ear after seeing the signal flare. I believe Justin, like Javier, is extremely desperate and regretful, all because Nick's team wouldn't take them in. Both Javier and Justin were essentially driven away by Jill and Osse, and in the end, Justin had to leave in disappointment. Clearly, Nick's team is a bunch of cowards, which made Jill's team even happier, thinking their chances of winning are higher. Is this $1 million game really going to be lost to justice? That's what I personally think. Surviving in the wilderness is for the tough. I don't want Jill's team to win, but I also can't stand Nick's cowardly crew. Maybe the producers should just let me decide who deserves the $1 million. Fast forward to day 35. It's -9 degrees, snow everywhere, and both teams are just wearing each other down. Winter has fully set in. Osse and Jill gather shells daily, while Nick's team does nothing. It's like a more crowded peace zone, less boring, but always one person short for a game. Only Nick's team can feel the real torment. Winter here looks beautiful, but surviving in it gets harder and harder. If this drags on, even the production crew might freeze to death. So, they quickly set some new rules. A helicopter arrives again, and Jill realizes it's time for the next challenge. With only 2 teams left, everyone is eager for what's next. Paul has been dreaming of taking the prize money home. The helicopter drops a supply box, and both teams rush to see what's inside. What new challenges await them? Nick's team got a compass and a letter, revealing that only one team could win. They had to start a long-distance hike, with the first team to reach the destination and collect the item winning the competition. Every team member had to arrive for it to count. More people could be a burden, as any one member could slow the team down. The hike would start the next morning. This news favored Jill's team, and with victory in sight, they finally saw the day they could go home. Nick's team is busy planning for tomorrow's hike, studying the map, and realizing they need to cross a river. Meanwhile, Jill's team doesn't face a river, which makes Paul despair, thinking their chances are slim. Nick feels the pressure, knowing the 2 girls on the other side are strong and fierce. Jill's team is also examining the terrain. They don't need to cross a river, but they do face a steep mountain. Jill plans to go around it, taking a longer route. With $1 million at stake, Jill is eagerly anticipating tomorrow, and I bet they won't sleep tonight. Tonight, sleep will be elusive with $1 million on the line. Nick's team is fueling up, ready to sprint to the finish. If Paul falters, he could slow them down. Meanwhile, Jill's team is already dreaming of spending their winnings, brimming with confidence. I never thought they'd be in such a strong position. On day 36, both teams face a 14-kilometer hike. At dawn, Nick's team makes final preparations. Their routes differ, but the goal is the same. Overall, the routes were similar, but Nick's team had to wait for low tide to cross a river. Paul suggested they cross barefoot and put on shoes afterward. Nick's route was flatter and easier, but involved multiple river crossings. Jill's team, eager to start, was also waiting for the right time. Their route was shorter but more challenging. By noon, they were ready to go. The 2 girls started saying some Jesus blessings, which I sometimes find hard to understand. I'm just a regular survival commentator, not a psychiatrist. If you're sick, go see a doctor at home. Don't make it hard for me here, okay? Survival commentary isn't for psychiatrists. If you're unwell, see a doctor at home. Don't complicate things for me here, okay? Jill's team believes this final challenge favors them and starts planning how to spend the prize money. $1 million can buy a house, a car, or even a sugar baby if you want. As the sun rises, their hiking challenge begins, and Jill's team sets off immediately. This hike tests their physical strength and endurance. Meanwhile, Nick's team still has to cross the river. They initially planned to walk around it, but now must change their route. Opting for a direct route seemed quicker. Soon, they encountered their first river. Paul waded in, but fearing deeper water, they removed their shoes. This slowed them down significantly. By the time they crossed, Jill's team had already advanced far, energized by thoughts of the prize money. Women can tap into immense strength when money is at stake. Their main challenge was navigating the dense jungle. The jungle was tough to navigate. For $1 million, they would jump into a pit of fire, let alone deal with a few trees. Nick's team faced a larger river, and there was no way around it but to take a detour. This undoubtedly cost them a lot of time. Every time they crossed a small river, they had to take off their shoes, and with the temperature at just 2 degrees, it was freezing. Luckily, they all had long legs. Nick felt a stinging sensation walking in the water. This stretch was really tough. They hoped to keep their clothes and shoes dry, but both teams ended up getting wet. The teams' routes are entirely different, depending on their choices. Even a small mistake during the hike could cost them the $1 million prize. Jill's team checks the map as they go to avoid getting lost. Meanwhile, Nick's team is still near the starting point, mainly because there are so many rivers. Jill's team is making rapid progress, while Nick's team is still wading through water. The mountain path is extremely difficult and exhausting, and it's easy to lose direction in the jungle. Even a slight deviation can be very dangerous. Jill's team just followed the footprints. They followed footprints that led them off course, but corrected their direction just in time. They've been walking so much their shoes are almost smoking, while Nick's team hasn't even put theirs on yet. After tackling a rugged mountain path, they now face a huge challenge, bypassing a lake to reach the other side. Jill realizes the lake isn't on the map, meaning they've gone the wrong way. They were supposed to reach the coastline, but ended up at a lake. After some discussion, Jill decided to go around the lake, but he picked a longer route. Meanwhile, Nick's team had crossed all the rivers and were putting on their shoes. Nick hadn't expected so many rivers, slowing their progress. Though Jill's team had taken a wrong turn, Nick's team also faced many obstacles. Now, it was time to move full speed ahead. Paul, motivated by thoughts of buying a house, was walking fast, leaving Nick and Luke behind. Jill's team finally made it around the lake. They even took a break along the way. Come on, it's $1 million prize. A 14-kilometer journey. I could run that in 2 hours. What are they doing? Get up and run. Jill's team still had 1.5 kilometers to get back on track. Such a beautiful environment, it would be a shame to waste it. Nick's team was also getting ready to move. At this point, their routes were almost identical. If it were me, I'd start running. Jill's team picked up the pace, while Nick's team was still leisurely looking at the map. The path seemed easy on the map, but in reality, it was a tough coastal route. It's not really a path, just dense woods. The trees here are great resources. Both teams are rushing now. Jill's team finally spots the coast. They just need to walk along the shore to reach the finish line. The path is easy now. They hope Nick's team is behind them. At this moment, Nick's team also reaches the coast. Paul starts to slow down. Maybe he's out of energy, and there's still a long way through the mountains. He might be really tired. Jill's team talks about the prize again. Ose gets more excited, thinking they can win today. Their confidence is sky high. Nick's team, on the other hand, sees Paul falling behind Nick and Luke. The shoreline is very rocky, and Paul is clearly lagging. At this critical moment, stamina is the ultimate test. Given Paul's age, this 14-kilometer trek is a huge challenge for him. The wood here is large but unfortunately wasted, not dry enough to burn, and would be useless in half a year. Paul keeps stopping to rest as he walks. If Paul can't keep up, he will definitely drag Nick's team down. Now, Paul has become a significant threat to Nick's team's chances of winning. Meanwhile, the two girls' pace remains very steady. They're motivated by the $1 million prize, with the finish line in sight. The first to arrive wins the money. Paul keeps stopping to rest, while Luke and the others urge him to hurry. He might be too exhausted, but he pushes on for the prize. If they don't win, the past 30+ days of starving and surviving will have been in vain. Jill's path is much easier, and they are just a few hours away from home, so they are picking up the pace. Meanwhile, Paul's path is full of rocks, and he is almost collapsing from exhaustion. The finish line is in sight. Nick throws away his backpack and starts running. If they don't hurry, Jill's team might actually win after 36 days of starvation. Survival itself has been draining their energy, and the finish line is right here. Nick's team reaches it first, securing their victory. Nick's team's cheers can be heard by Jill's team, sealing the outcome of their long days of survival. This experience will be invaluable for survival, and Paul finally achieved his dream of buying a house. The competition was about justice and morality, triumphing over the despicable. After winning, Nick immediately called his sister, who had always supported him financially. Paul bought a house for his son right away. The bag contained $1 million. Nick's team took home the prize, while Jill's team faced a disappointing end. Their dream of getting rich shattered. Ose was in tears, unwilling to accept that the least favored team had won. They always believed they were unbeatable and deserved the $1 million. This illusion lasted for 36 days. As the production team flew the champions out, Jill's team was left in tears. They lost not only the money, but also their integrity and morals. Their failure was inevitable. So, this season's survival challenge has wrapped up. Are you happy with the winners?